In January of 2021, I reached a breaking point, and I quit my safe corporate marketing job to start over from the bottom in Hollywood. And about a year later, I was able to work my way up from the bottom to a six-figure salary job working for one of the world's largest production studios. In this video, I'm going to tell you exactly how I did that. And so rather than just relying on my own memory, I called up my old manager who had offered me both my original PA position as well as the promotion 1 year later. I asked them what I did, what they noticed, what worked, what didn't. And I walked away from that conversation with a list of 5 action items that you can use right now to give you a tactical advantage to manufacture the circumstances that will lead to your success when an opportunity becomes available. And more importantly, I'm also going to tell you exactly where I learned to do these things so that you can do them too. And let me tell you this right now. You are going to have to work just as hard, and the risk of failure is just as high doing the thing that you don't want as it is for the thing that you do. Hey, so I'm editing this video right now and I'm realizing that I left out a very important disclaimer. I'm not telling you that you should just up and quit your job. All I'm saying is that if you're anything like me and you're willing to start over from the bottom, which you can afford to do, and you're willing to place a bet on yourself and trust that things will work out if you do the work, then this video is for you. Which actually brings us to the first item on my list. Number 1. Gain trust. Once I made the decision to quit my safe marketing job, I exhausted my network, sending resumes to everyone that I could possibly think of. I told them that I would do anything they wanted me to do. I didn't care how little I got paid. I didn't care what I had to do. I was hungry. And the person who got my resume in front of management was actually somebody who I had known and worked with in the past on zero-budget short films that we made just for the fun of it. And because that person trusted me to be a good worker and to be fun to be around, they jumped at the opportunity to get me on their team. I did the basics. I showed up early. I didn't pretend to know any better than I did. I fulfilled every request that was ever asked of me. Management never had to question my ability to accomplish tasks. I was humble and I was happy to be there. And whenever I had a suggestion for how we might be able to do something, I would never push back if they ultimately decided that they wanted it done their way. Because I understood that they are in a position of leadership, and because of that, they might know something that I don't. They might have taken something into consideration that I haven't. That's why it's so important to stay humble. Don't be afraid to look like an idiot. There's almost always an advantage to appearing a little bit dumber than you actually are, but there's no advantage to pretending to be the smartest person in the room. And for me, there was a lot that I was genuinely ignorant of. The entertainment industry is a world in and of itself, and it has its own language. And because of that, I was not afraid to look stupid to some people, which I'm sure I did. But to the right people, I looked coachable. I put them into a position where they were teaching me and I was learning from them. I gave them the power of influence. Never forget that people in leadership positions like to feel like they are in charge. And if you can humble yourself, put yourself in a position where you are the constant learner. You can get people to trust you and trust in your ability to be dependable because they're going to teach you how they like to do things. And even if it's not the way that you might instinctively do something, your coachability will get you noticed. I showed them that I had a personal way of doing things and that I could build a system that could integrate with and complement their own. I gained their trust through consistent, constant, repeated action. So by the time that a promotion was available a year later, I had already proven to management that I was capable of performing tasks and communicating whenever I had to deviate from their blueprint. Well, that actually leads us to the second item on our list. Number 2 is to take ownership. When the boss asked me to do something and I had given a suggestion and been told to try doing it their way, I still owned the result while trusting that the responsibility was ultimately theirs. They are the leader. My work and the results that I get would reflect upon them. And when we think about results, what do I actually mean by that? In entertainment production, everything that you're doing is an expense. They don't profit until the show is on TV, sometimes a year after production has wrapped. And that's why they say that time is money, because it's true. Any sort of delay to the production can wind up resulting in a massive unnecessary cost. And so results are literally measured on one thing. Are you helping the process, or are you creating friction? And so when I was given a task, I would often be very pragmatic about it. And if I ever didn't understand anything, I would ask clarifying questions. And because I was operating off of a blueprint that I was given, I was able to detach and not become emotionally invested in the process, but rather focus on the results that they wanted. And if anything in the process broke down along the way, if any sort of friction was created and somebody needed to complain at me, I would still own the result in the moment and take the heat, which happened a lot. But because I was following a blueprint that I was given and trying my best to do it how they wanted me to, and because I'd get it done, over time they saw me as the person who they could depend upon and who they didn't need to micromanage. And there were some days where things would be going wrong and moving fast, and it would be chaotic. And who do you think they leaned on? And do you think that I ever complained if I got asked to do a bunch of stuff? No. Because I knew that meant that they thought that I was a rock star. And whenever something didn't work, we were able to have a conversation about what went wrong, where I needed to deviate and why, and then we would adjust in the future. And because of that, it was pretty clear from the conversation that I had with my old manager in preparation for this video that ownership was the defining skill that helped me stand out from everybody else. And speaking of standing out, number 3 is to be grateful. Gratitude is most likely going to become a recurring theme on this channel. I spoke about it in my last video, and I definitely think that it has a place in here as well. One of the biggest things that I noticed in general about production crews, not just our team, but the entire crew at large across every show that I've ever worked on in the last 2 years, is that everybody complains. Nobody's happy to be there. Nobody's grateful. And it's the weirdest thing to me because in all of that time, I was just walking on cloud 9 being there. And I had dreamed of working on a studio production my entire life. And it felt amazing just to get the opportunity to be in the room. And so I made a conscious decision early on that I was going to make a concerted effort to never complain about the work, no matter how demanding it got, no matter how crazy the hours were, and no matter how bad the attitudes were that I was surrounded by. And that's why gratitude was so important, because on a team full of people who were complaining every time they got asked to do something, who do you think stuck out? It was me, the person who was grateful for the opportunity to prove their value. Within every problem is an opportunity to provide value. If you take nothing else from this video, I hope that you'll leave with that. Things are going to go wrong. Things are going to break down. And my value as a worker comes from my ability to solve those problems as they arise. That's the job. That's work. Across any industry, any business, that's what you do. You solve problems. And the more problems that you learn how to solve, the more value that you provide. When you combine the skill of gratitude with the skill of ownership over your results, and you combine that with the right opportunity, amazing things can happen for you. And practicing gratitude makes you a more positive influence on the people that you're around. And that actually brings us to the next item on our list. Number 4 is to build rapport. One of the things that my manager mentioned on our call in preparation for this video, which I hadn't really thought about, but it's so true, is the fact that most people don't actually like to be questioned. They perceive questions as a threat because they don't question why they're doing what they do. They don't want to break the mold or push the envelope or grow or be better. Most people just want to serve the status quo. Most people are satisfied with good enough. According to my manager, who I spoke to on the phone, the only reason why I was able to get away with asking so many questions is because I took the time to build rapport. I treated people with the respect that even though they didn't deserve it 100% of the time, they wanted it. There were a lot of people who treated me in very unlikable ways. But my mentor from my marketing job once told me that everybody's a story. Not just they have a story, they are a story. And the more resilient that you can be in the face of somebody's negativity and their bullying, and the more that you can help them fix the story, the more value that you have. And that really changed my thinking in a lot of ways, particularly when it comes to criticism. I knew to look for the positives in people, even though the negatives were almost always more readily apparent. So, for example, when I started on that first show, one of my coworkers was promoted to supervisor. And I wanted that promotion back then, but I didn't even know that it was a thing until that person got promoted. And this was only 2 weeks after I had gotten hired. I hadn't really put in any of the deposits to make myself even a consideration at that point. And a lot of people complained about it because that supervisor hadn't taken the time to build rapport with people when they were just a peer. But the thing about that supervisor is that when I joined the team as their peer, I had built rapport by talking about our backgrounds, and they knew that I came from a position of leadership. And so after their promotion, they confided in me that they were in over their head, and they asked me for help. And I was happy to give them some feedback, not in the form of condemning or criticizing, but just soft suggestions. And because I, for a long time, didn't complain or criticize, and offered my help to the leadership, and came from a place of humility, and made myself coachable and built rapport with all of these people in management, can you guess what happened? That supervisor then went on to another show and was promoted to manager. And that's how I got my next job, which led to my next job and my next job and my next job. And by the time that I was promoted a year later by my old manager, I was the first and only person that came to their mind when the opportunity opened up. I stuck out in their memory, even a year after that first show had wrapped, because good people are hard to come by. And just like bad people get a reputation for being bad and doing bad things, good people gain a reputation for being good and doing good things. And so if you make an effort to maintain relationships with the right people, not even for personal gain, but because they're good people and you want good people in your life, they might be able to help you down the line when you really need help. But the thing is, you have to know how to ask. Which brings us to number 5. You have to ask the right way. I made it very clear the second that I learned that this supervisor job was a thing that I wanted it. But it has to be said that just because you want something doesn't mean that you deserve it or that you're entitled to it. It's nobody else's homework to give you that thing that you want. I was passed over for the promotion at first because I hadn't done anything by that point to make myself stand out as an option. Again, when you think about the result that you really want to achieve, whose job is it to do the work that's standing between you and the result? And so when you want something and you put that desire out into the world and to the universe, it's important to know the difference between saying, I want this versus give it to me. I wanted this job. I asked for this job. I worked hard for this job. But I asked in more than one way. I didn't just ask with my words. I spread the question out 1,000 times in 1,000 ways over the course of an entire year through consistent acts of humble service to the leadership and to the team, not just on that first show, but on every show that I worked on. And if you ask enough times, in enough ways, to enough people, it'll happen eventually. I'm not special. I had just done the work and was prepared by the time that the opportunity presented itself. I've been very blessed, and that's a part of the reason why I say that gratitude is so important. You are going to come into contact with people and situations that are going to make you question whether or not you are doing the right thing. There will be doubt. Doubt is a natural consequence of finding yourself in a situation that you don't have control over. And guess what? 90% of life is situations that you're not going to have control over. The only thing that you can control is yourself. And this is how you do that in ways that will really matter and that will get you noticed by people who are paying attention. And those are the right people. And if you ask the right way, not by telling them that you want something, but by showing them that you can handle it if it's given to you, you will be rewarded. So where did I learn all of this stuff? How can you learn these skills and deploy them and grow them into a habit so that you're prepared for when opportunity comes knocking? Well, the answer is that I read a lot of books, specifically leadership books. And it didn't always used to be that way. I used to read a lot of fiction, and I still love my fiction. But working in that marketing job and working in an agency where we were coaching people and helping people with self-improvement and improving businesses, leadership was a vital skill to learn. And the only way to really influence people is by fixing yourself first, doing the internal work so that when you're speaking to a person and they give you an opportunity to give them advice, you'll be speaking from experience. And when you speak from personal experience, because you've lived these things, your conviction will always prevail. So therefore, if you do the internal work first, then all of the rest will follow. And so as for the actual books that I read to fix myself, which is an ongoing process, by the way, and your results may vary, but the skills that I gained that I used to network my way to six figures came from, number one, As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. This book taught me that our thoughts, the internal conversation, is what ultimately defines our reality. And if you can learn the kind of faith that this book teaches you, then you'll master the doubt. You'll master life. And I recommend this one first because it's really short, and all of the font is really big. So you can read it in an afternoon and your entire life will change as a result. Number two, Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. This is where you will learn the skill of ownership, how to influence, gain trust, build rapport. And if you don't know Jocko, he's a retired Navy SEAL. He has a very inspirational story, and I highly recommend this. The audiobook in particular is awesome. If you want to learn how to lead, then Extreme Ownership. That's the one. And then number three, Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. This book changed my life, and I've listened to it on audiobook probably 5 or 6 times at this point. This is actually the book that I was reading while I was working that initial PA job, and this thing taught me how to push through the physical demands of the job that I was working. The entire point of this book is to teach people how to turn suffering into a superpower. And it was transformative for me. Again, the audiobook in particular is incredible because they do this whole sort of podcast dealio where between all the chapters and everything, they do a little behind the scenes. There's extra content. It's great. So to wrap things up, if you're not where you want to be in your life, first thing, go and read those books and start to put those lessons into practice so that you can learn how to gain trust, how to take ownership of your results, how to be grateful, how to build rapport with people, and how to ask for what you want the right way. However, I've said it before and I'm going to say it again. I have been very fortunate in my life. The opportunity to work in the entertainment industry only existed for me because of some very specific circumstances that were completely out of my control. And while it might be true that this opportunity came around due to luck, I've missed dozens of opportunities in my life because I just wasn't capable of seeing them. I hadn't done the internal work, and so I couldn't even recognize those opportunities when they presented themselves. And by the time this opportunity had come along, I had done so much work to change myself and to become better that it genuinely felt like all of the stars were aligning. It's the right skill set in combination with the right opportunity at the right time. And opportunities really come from building your network, gaining people's trust, and being a leader that people want to work with. And so I hope that you enjoyed this video and that it provided some kind of value for you. And consider subscribing. I'm going to be making stuff like this pretty regularly, and I'd love to see you in the next one. Take care.